Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to look at a bit more advanced Postman usage. It's just going to make your life so much easier. Now let's look at things that we've been writing over and over again in our requests. An obvious one is this http://127.0.0.1:5000/. This is everywhere in our requests. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut and leave only the /items, so it mimics our endpoint. This looks like the endpoint. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put curly brace, URL, close curly brace, close curly brace. So that's two opening curly braces in front, URL, and then two closing curly braces. Now, this gives us an error because it tells us it cannot find that URL. Because what we have to do is we have to go up here to this cog and press on it, and then press Manage Environments. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a new environment. This environment is going to be section 6. And here the key is going to be URL, and the value is going to be this base URL. http://127.0.1:5000. Okay, so just add that. And then close it, and now we can run it and make sure that the environment is selected, of course, up here at the top right. And now that is essentially replacing this curly brace URL, close curly brace by the URL in your environment. Okay? All right, so what other things can we do? Well, the first things first, let's go ahead and copy that, and let's put it in every URL there. Make sure that you are not replacing the /. That / still has to be there. And the reason I'm keeping the / is, again, so it matches the way the endpoints are defined in Flask. They're always defined as / something. And remember to save all of these as well. That's also important. Okay, now we've got all of that done. There is something else that we've been doing that has been a bit of a pain, really, and that is this JWT token. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to replace all the string of numbers and characters by JWT_token. Okay, so we're going to make the authorization header be JWT space, and then two curly braces, JWT_token, two closing curly braces. And then we're going to save this again. Okay, and then we're going to look at some pretty advanced and pretty cool stuff here in Postman. We're going to go to the auth endpoint, and then we're going to look at tests. Okay. Now, these tests are JavaScript code. JavaScript code that runs after the request has been processed by the server and sent back to us. And what that means is that when the server sends us the JWT token in JSON format, these tests here can access the value of the JWT token, and they can do things like verify it is not empty, for example. They can do things like verify it came back within 5 seconds as opposed to 10 minutes. But they can also do things like change an environment variable. So what we're going to do in this test is we're going to get the value coming back from the server, and we're going to put that value in an environment variable, which is going to be the JWT_token variable there. Okay? So let's do that. Let's go to the auth endpoint, go to the tests. And then what we're going to do is, first of all, receive the JSON code. So we're going to do the following. var JSON data equals JSON all in caps dot parse, and then in brackets response body. Now what this is doing is it's creating a new variable in JavaScript. That's what the var does. it calls the variable JSON data, and what it puts in that variable is the parsed response body. The response body is a variable that's already been created for us by Postman, and that contains essentially whatever the server responds with. Now we have to do JSON.parse so that JavaScript can convert the JSON content to a JavaScript object, which then gives us a bit more flexibility in terms of retrieving values and things like that. Okay, and the way I got this code was by pressing one of these snippets. In my case, I pressed response body JSON value check. And what that does is that it gives you that code there. And it also gives you a test. And this test says tests, and then in square brackets, the name of the test equals, and then some Boolean comparison. In this case, what it's checking is that some value in the JSON data is equal to 100. But we could do, for example, JSON data dot access token is not equal to undefined. So we could do something like this. And what this does is this tells Postman to start checking whether the access token is empty or not. Notice that in JavaScript you need exclamation mark followed by 2 equal signs, whereas in Python you just need 1 equal sign after the exclamation mark. That's just a small difference between JavaScript and Python. Okay, so the first thing we do is we'll check the access token is not empty. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down here to this snippet here that says set an environment variable. And we're going to press that. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us some code to set an environment variable. The variable we want to set is jwt_token, which is the one we used in the get method. And the value is going to be, you guessed it, JSON data dot access token. And we're going to save that endpoint. And now we're going to press send. And notice how now the tests down here says 1 out of 1 passed, because the access token was not empty. So therefore this evaluated to true, and therefore this tests your test name there was true. We can go onto the tests, and it says pass your test name. So maybe what we can do is rename this to access token was not empty. Okay, and then if we send this again, now it says that the access token was not empty, and that's a good thing. Okay, we can save that. Something even more awesome, though, is that now we can go over to this eye icon there, and notice how, as well as the URL, which we set manually, we've now got the JWT token, which has been set by this here. If we go to the body, we can compare that they are the same, and indeed they are. Starts with EYJ, ends with 0DRG. So they both seem to be identical. And now we can go over to the get endpoint, and we can send, and it works. Item not found because that item doesn't exist anymore, but notice that we've not received the signature invalid error because the JWT token has just been populated from what we got in the auth endpoint. This does still mean that we have to call the auth method, the auth endpoint rather, before getting the item, but we always had to do that. And now the JWT token gets populated for us, so we don't have to worry about that, which is pretty awesome. Other things that are also interesting in the tests are that you can do things like response time is less than 200 milliseconds. Normally, REST APIs should respond very quickly, so you should make sure that your endpoints respond within a reasonable amount of time. 200 milliseconds is fairly reasonable, although you'd normally expect APIs that perform well to respond within 50 milliseconds. It all depends on sort of where your server is and things like that. Another interesting one is the status code. Checks that it is 200. So once again, if we send this now, we'll see that tests are 2 out of 2. But if we copy these tests and go to the post endpoint, and we send, we'll see that tests are only 1 out of 2. Because the status code is not 200 when we are creating items. It is 201. So we have to remember to set these tests to the correct values as well. Okay, this was just a few of the advanced things you can do with Postman. You can do things like retrieve the values from the JSON response, you can put them in environment variables, you can check the contents of it, you can check the status code and the response times, and essentially you can do anything you want with JavaScript in here. But it's really interesting that these tests can be written, because further on along the course, we will be able to run all of these endpoints in sequence and use them as an automated check. So for example, we could first run the register endpoint, then the auth endpoint, then create an item, and then retrieve the item. And that could be what's called a collection. And we can run that collection as a test. Each one of the endpoints has their own tests, and if they all pass, we know that our API is working. We're not going to get into that in this video, but it nevertheless is something you can do, and if you're interested, you can look into that yourself, but we are going to look at it in the future inside the course as well. So that's everything for this video. Just wanted to save you a bit of time dealing with the JWT tokens and stuff. So hopefully that was interesting, and I'll see you in the very next video.